ॐ दक्षिणास्य समारम्भा शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमा अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ता स्मर्या गुरुपरम्परा श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। परिज्ञानाश्रम श्रीगुरुशङ्कर परिज्ञानाश्रम शङ्कर सद्गुरु केशव वामन कृष्ण पाण्डुरङ्ग आनन्द परिज्ञान गुरु सद्यो जात शङ्कर सद्गुरु गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुः सुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः। Now we are in the 24th verse of chapter 4. So let's chant it. Brahmarpanam Brahma Havihi Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. As I said last time, this Brahmarpanam is actually the crux of the teaching of Vedanta. It is the central meaning of the teaching of Vedanta, which makes us understand that I, as the Atma, is akarta, abhokta, and all actions that are done, they are neither mine nor do they belong to me anyway. This is the teaching of Vedanta, which actually, really speaking, liberates me from the karma and karma phala, which we have already seen. And this verse, Brahmarpanam, is the vision of the verse number 18. We saw that verse number 18 in this chapter. Karmani akarmayah pashet, akarmani cha karmayah, sa buddhiman manushyeshu, sa yuktah kritsnakrit. So what we saw that the person who is able to see akarma in karma, that means a person in spite of doing all the actions is able to see himself, the Atma, as the non-doer, where he is able to see inaction in action. And also, when anybody says that I am not doing anything, it is the body which may not be doing anything, but as the anatma, there is no time when there is inaction. This kind of an understanding that in spite of all the hectic activity that is happening in the anatma body mind sense complex, I am not affected by either the action or by the phala. This was what we saw in the 18th verse, Karmani Akarma Pashit. Now, the vision of this 18th verse as to how exactly to see this, how to understand the vision of the 18th verse is in the 24th verse, where Brahmarpanam Brahmahavi is given as the very vision or the very meaning of verse number 18. Now, in the last session, I already started dealing with this verse and I said that the understanding of Vedanta or the teaching of Vedanta happens actually in three steps. The first step is the Atma Anatma Viveka, which Lord Krishna himself gave from the verse number 13 to the verse number 25 of the chapter 2, where he delineated very clearly that I, the Atma, is the consciousness, whereas I, the body mind sense complex, which I right now call as I, is not the real I, it is the Anatma. Anatma is not I mean, I am not the Anatma. The Anatma body mind sense complex does not belong to me, nor am I the Anatma. Anatma is mere matter principle which depends upon me, the Atma consciousness, for its existence. So, that is the first step of teaching of Vedanta. The second step of teaching and understanding Vedanta is that I am not the consciousness only with respect to this body. I am the consciousness or the Atma in every body mind sense complex, which we call as the Upadhi. In every Upadhi, the consciousness that is there is nothing but I. The very same consciousness is behind all the body mind sense complexes. This is the second step of understanding Vedanta. And in the third step, which is the ultimate understanding, is that what is said here, I, the Atma, consciousness, is the only thing that is there, and everything else, which we call as Anatma, is nothing but an appearance in Atma. That means I, this consciousness, is in and through everything that is there in this Jagat. The entire experiential Jagat or the universe that I'm experiencing is nothing but the warp and woof of this consciousness, the appearance in this warp and woof. And I, the Atma, is the very content of this entire universe. And this Atma, which I call as Atma, with the reference of this particular Anatma, the same Atma is now called as Brahman. With reference to the total Jagat, this very same consciousness is called as Brahman, and that Brahman, with the point of view of reference from this body mind sense complex, I call it as the Sakshi Chaitanya Atma. So, Atma and Brahman are not two different things. They are that very consciousness which is there everywhere, Sarvagatam Brahma. Wherever there is anything that I see, the entire universe is nothing but the manifestation of Brahman itself. It may look as if the Jagat is a separate entity. No, the separateness of the entity of Jagat is merely an appearance, it's merely an experience. But ultimately, what I have to understand is whatever is there is nothing but this Atma Brahman. This is called as Sarvatra Brahma Darshanam. Sarvatra Atma Darshanam. And such a person who sees this consciousness, Atma Brahman, everywhere and whatever is there, it is nothing but this Brahman or Atma. Such a person is called as a Brahma Karma Samadhi, which is the last word in this particular verse. So he is also called as a Brahmadarshi, Sarvatra Brahmadarshanam. He sees everything as Brahman, within, without, to the right, to the left, above, below, everywhere. Whatever is there is nothing but this Brahman, and this entire universe, including my body, mind, sense complex, is a mere appearance in this. Now, let's take one or two examples which will be very clear to you. Now, supposing we find an iceberg in the ocean. Now, iceberg is it looks as if It is a separate appearance, which is a solid one with a particular shape and size, and as if it is floating in the waters of the ocean. But ultimately, what is it? That iceberg is nothing but the same water. The same water of the ocean is manifesting itself in a certain name and form called as the iceberg. Now, the iceberg exists in water. It has come out of water and it dissolves also when it dissolves into water. So, the iceberg is not separate from water. Now, let us take another example. The fat in the milk, the fat content in the milk, or the butter in the milk. Now, there is fat all through the milk. In every molecule of the milk, there is this fat or butter. But with a certain parishkara, with a certain prakriya, with a certain process, we are able to get the butter out of this milk. Now, supposing we put this butter back into the milk, the butter is floating on the milk. Now, is this butter different from milk? No, isn't it? It is an appearance. The same milk is manifesting as a blob of butter also, which is floating on it. Similarly, it is said that this universe, which is an experiential universe of names and forms, is nothing but Brahman only, with a particular manifest name and form. Namarupatmakam Jagat, which is arising in Atma, in Brahman, and exists in that Brahman, resolves in that Brahman. And what is that Brahman? It is nothing but I, the consciousness, I, the Atma, is that Brahman. So, this is the ultimate or the final teaching of Vedanta, where I see everything, including myself and everything else, as nothing but Brahmarupa. I am the Brahmaswarupa. This entire thing is nothing but Brahmaswarupa Meva. Brahman being the warp and woof of this entire universe. This is what is called as the Brahmajnanam or Atmajnanam. And now, if we'll go to the next step now as to explaining this, what this verse now means. If I see everything as Brahman, then when this anatma is doing a certain action, okay, there are components of an action. Whenever an action is done, the atma is akarta. I am not doing any action, that we have already understood. When the anatma body mind sense complex, this ahankara, and at present I will say I am doing this action, but then really speaking, the body mind sense complex, the doer, let us call it as the doer. When an action is being done, there are many components of this action, isn't it? There is a doer who's doing the action, there is an object of the action, correct? There is an instrument through which this action is done, there is a purpose for which this action is done, and there is a result for which this action is done. There is a locus or location in which this action is done. So all these are the components of every action, and in Sanskrit grammar we call them as karakas. We have the karakas or the components of every action. There should be minimum two at least. There should be a doer and there should be an object of doing. Kartrikaraka, karmakaraka. Without these two, there cannot be any action. One karaka cannot accomplish any action. There should be a minimum doer and the object of the doing. Then only some doing, whatever doing has to go on, can happen. Now, what Krishna says is, what a Upanishad say is that when everything in the Jagat is Brahman, then who's the doer? The doer is also Brahman, correct? What is the object of doing? The object of doing also is Brahman. The instrument with which something is being done, that also is Brahman. The purpose for which this particular action is done, that is also Brahman. The result which accrues out of this action, that is also Brahman. And the location or the locus in which that action is done is also Brahman. That means when all the karakas, all the components of action are nothing but Brahman, Then who is doing the action? What is the action that is being done? For whose sake the action is being done? For what phala the action is being done? The action is merely what? As we saw earlier, indriyani indriyartheshu vartante, gunaha guneshu vartante. And in the fifth chapter, Krishna says, this jnani, the Brahmadarshi, Sarvatra Brahmadarshi, says, aham na kinchit karomi. Aham atma na kinchit karomi. This is the understanding or the vision of Vedanta. And Krishna explains this particular verse with the example of a yajna or a ritual, a Vaidika ritual. With that, he takes an example, because when you do a ritual, in a particular ritual, one can see all the karakas, all the components of that particular action. So here he takes any kind of a fire ritual that is being done. He takes the example of this in Brahmarpanam. What does he say now? Brahma Arpanam. Now, whenever a fire principle is done, a yajna is done, I am offering the havis or the offering to the gods, to whichever deity, Indraya, ya Varunaya, or Vayave, whatever it is, Indraya idam, Vayave idam, Agnaye idam. That way I offer the offerings, for a particular deity. Now, the havis that is offered, that is the object, that which is the object of the karma. And to offer that havis into the fire, in the fire ritual, there is a spoon like thing, the ladle. A ladle is used. That is called as the arpanam. Now Krishna says, in a fire ritual, the spoon or the ladle which offers the havis is also Brahman. Brahma arpanam, Brahma Havihi, the havis or the offering that is offered into the fire with this ladle is also Brahman, because I don't see anything other than Brahman. Everything is Brahman, so all the components of every action is Brahman. So the arpanam, the ladle, the instrument with which the offering is done is Brahman. The offering itself, the karma, that is Havihi, is Brahman. Brahmagno, the Agni, the locus, the location into which this Havis is offered is also Brahman. Brahmana Hutam, the one who is offering this body, mind, sense complex, this doer of the yajna, Brahmana Hutam, Ahutam, the one who is doing the Ahuti is also Brahman. Brahmaiva tena gantavyam. By this action, what is achieved, what is attained as karma phalam is also only Brahman. Brahmaiva tena gantavyam. Tena means by this action, by this yajna, whatever is got, whatever is attained is nothing but Brahman itself. Brahma karma samadhina. For a Brahma karma samadhi, for a sarvatra brahmadarshi, for a jnani, for such a person, every action with all its components is nothing but Brahman. Then, where are the components? There is no separate component. There is no separate yajna. There is no separate doer. Everything is nothing but Brahman. Then, who is doing the karma? This is actually the vision of karmani akarma yaha pashet. In spite of all the activities of the yajna that are happening, I, the Atman, is not the doer. I do not accrue any phala of this particular action. This is the meaning of Brahma Arpanam Brahma Havihi, where Krishna is taking an action as a sacred action, a Vaidika karma of a yajna as an example. Now we can take any other karma also. Krishna has taken it because after all it is, the saram of Vedas. So he's taking a Vaidika karma. Now I'm sure you all know that in all the ashrams, you know, when the food is served in the dining room, the students have to chant Brahmarpanam Brahma Havihi before starting food. Before one takes food, one has to chant this. This is compulsory. Even in schools, it is there. Before, food, when everything is ready, food is served. But before the person, gets into that, it is chanted. And what is the significance of it? The child may not know, but it is said that this process of eating is nothing but a yajna. I, the eater, am Brahman. That which is offered into the Jataragni, into the fire of digestion, that annam, like havis, is also havis, is also nothing but Brahman. And the instrument, the hand or the spoon or whatever with which I offer the food into this Jataragni is also Brahman. And what I where I offer it into the fire of the digestive system, that is also Brahman. And for what purpose? To get that nutrition and for the body to grow, to remain healthy. That karma phala is also nothing but Brahman. Therefore, Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavi is the ultimate vision of seeing that in spite of the karma, no karma actually happens. There is an inaction or non-action in and through all the action. If we take the example of a big storm, where is all the action happening? All the action with all the forceful winds which can completely destroy cities and everything is actually the periphery. Whereas the eye of the storm, the center of the storm is absolutely silent. It is absolutely quiet. And similarly, I, the Atma, the very center of the universe, the very center of this body mind sense complex, the very content of this entire universe, no action is happening here. This is the vision of karmani akarma yaha pashet. Now Krishna wants to highlight this. Now this understanding is also called as Jnana Yajna. Okay, Jnana Yajna. What is Jnana Yajna? Understanding this Vedantic teaching and seeing Brahman everywhere, Sarvatra Brahma Darshanam, that vision, and understanding that Aham Akarta Abhokta Atma Asmi, in spite of all the action that is happening in this body, mind, sense complex. This understanding, with the help of the Shastra, Vedanta, through the words of the Guru, this entire process is called as the Jnana Yajna. That is why, Chinmayanandji used to call all his Gita sessions and Gita as Gita Jnana Yajna. Even now, whenever any Swadhyaya is happening, whenever there is a study of scriptures is happening, where we are trying to get this vision, learn this vision, they are all called as Jnana Yajnas. Jnanam or understanding this is equivalent to a yajna in which I have to understand that I, the Atma, is not the doer. Aham akarta, abhokta, silent, centered Atma, aham asmi. And whatever action is happening in the Jagat, in the body, mind, sense complex, has nothing to do with me. It is a mere appearance, just like the Jagat is a mere appearance in me, the Atma, Brahman. Now, in the next few verses, Lord Krishna is going to talk about various such disciplines which he calls as yajna. Now, he says Krishna wants to highlight this jnana yajna. And how do you highlight something? You give the background of some other things to highlight something very important. This 24th verse and the vision and understanding we get out of this is so important that Krishna wants to highlight it. He doesn't want to leave it there just in a blue cloth or a red cloth, so that in that background, this gem shines. So, this gem of this verse, 24th verse, the gems of this teaching of Vedanta in this verse are highlighted by giving a few other disciplines which Krishna calls as yajna in the background. And to understand that in the background of all these yajnas or disciplines, this is the best one. Jnana yajna is the best compared to all the other yajnas. Now, all the other yajnas are here given as what? As various disciplines. Now, why does Krishna call the disciplines as yajna? Now, Krishna talks about disciplines where I discipline the body, mind, sense complex. I discipline it. And the discipline is with the attitude of yajna, where there is an offering to the Lord, there is a prayer involved. And the result of such a yajna, which is in the form of a discipline, is nothing but that which gives me chitta shuddhi and chitta naishchalyam for chitta shuddhi. So, any action, any discipline that involves prayer, any discipline which is meant for my spiritual evolution in the form of chitta shuddhi and chitta naishchalyam, which makes me a jnana yogya, which helps me to get jnana yogyata prapti. Such a discipline Krishna calls as yajna. And in the from the 25th verse up till the 33rd verse, Krishna talks about various yajnas which are nothing but disciplines. And let us see, let us not go too much into details. It is just to highlight and give in the background what different kinds of disciplines, a person has to do to understand this vision that was told in the 24th verse. So, the 25th verse now says, Daivameva pare yajnam yoginah paryupasate brahmagnava pare yajnam yajnenaivopajuhvati. Here, again Krishna talks about two types of yajnas here. The first one is when a karma yogi does a yajna in the form of offering something to various deities for a particular purpose. That is also a yajna. But then the karma yogi here is trying to do that yajna with the attitude of karma yoga by offering the very action of doing this yajna to Ishvara, and whatever results he gets out of following that yajna. For a particular purpose, he does a karma yogi. He wants to have a certain result and he is wanting to do a deva yajna, offering something to a particular deity for the sake of attaining some particular phalam. But as a karma yogi, he offers his action to Ishvara and willing to accept any karma phala that comes as Ishvara prasada. So here Krishna says, Apare yoginaha. There are karma yogis. What do they do? Daivameva. Daivameva paryupasate. They will be doing various yajnas like deva yajnas, rituals, fire rituals, Vaidika yajnas for a particular fulfillment of a particular desire, maybe, but they do it with an attitude of karma yoga, Ishwararpana buddhya, and Ishvara prasada buddhya. The action is done. And then he says, Apare, second line, there are many others, okay? Brahmagno yajnam yagnena eva upajuhvati. The third and fourth line. There are other people, those who are jnana yogis, those who are already prepared for this jnanam by following a lifestyle of karma yoga. What do? They do this jnana yajnam in the form of what? He says that Brahmagno, in the Agni of this knowledge, in the Agni of this Brahman or knowledge of Brahman, what do they offer? Yajnam, Yagnena Yeva Upajuhvati. This Jnana Yogi offers his own ahankara, his own ignorance into the fire of knowledge called as Brahman. This is Jnana Yajna. What am I doing? I, the Ajnani, I am offering my Ajnanam, my ignorance, and aham karta, I am the doer iti ahankara. I offer into the fire of Atmajnanam or Brahmajnanam, and what comes out? What comes out is a parishkrita, samskrita, jnani ahankara, which understands that I am not the doer at all. You may find it a little difficult to understand at present, but as we go along, it is going to make sense, because Krishna has taken a jump here. He has taken a real jump into the absolute teaching of Vedanta here, and one has to go on ruminating over it. One has to listen to it again and again, think over it again and again. So he says that there is this Deva Yajna, the, the Vedika Yajna, and there are some people who do the Jnana Yajna in the form of offering their own ignorance and ahankara into the fire of this Brahma Jnanam. And ultimately he says that this Brahma Yajnam, which was talked about in the 24th verse and which is also being explained here in the third and fourth lines of this verse, ultimately that is the most superior of all the yajnas. That is what Krishna is going to talk about later. Now let us go to the other disciplines which Krishna calls as the yajnas. Here we have to understand that here in the following verses which we find here, now, the yajna here does not mean a ritual. Okay, only in the first two lines of the previous verse, it meant a yajna as a ritual where something is offered to a deity. Now, from now onwards, here, yajna means a discipline with a prayerful attitude for the sake of chitta shuddhi, chitta naischalya. That is the spiritual evolution and spiritual growth. So, here, Krishna talks about various disciplines we take, right from Shama, Dhamma, Pranayama, everything, yoga, all these things Krishna talks about. And in the background of all this, though these are useful, though these are going to help me when done with the attitude of Karma Yoga, help me to develop the capacity to understand this knowledge. Brahma Jnanam Sarvatra Brahma Darshanam. These are by far inferior to Jnana Yajnam or Brahma Yajnam. That is what he's going to say in the next few verses. Now in the 36th verse, he takes up Shama and Dhamma. We already know what is Shama and Dhamma, isn't it? Management of the Indriyas, management of the mind is called as Shama. What is the meaning of that? I don't give in to the fancies of the Indriyas. I expose my indriyas to the objects which are really not contrary to my spiritual growth. That those objects which do not distract me from my goal. Those objects which are not dharma viruddhaha. Therefore, I offer my sense organs into the fire of self discipline. This is what is going to be told in the 26th verse. It says Shrotra-din-indriyananye Sanyamagnishu juhvati Shabda-din vishayananye Indriyagnishu juhvati. So here he says that the very action of the sense organs, Shrotradini Indriyani, all the organs of perception, that is the eyes and the ears and the nose and the tongue which tastes and the skin, all the organs of perception, the Jnanendriyani. What am I doing? Here we have to include the Karmendriyas also. What do I do in the yajna? Sanyamagnishu juhvati. I offer all the Indriyas actions into the fire of Shama. That is, I do not allow the sense organs to completely hold me or get the hold of me. I see that the Indriyas move around wherever it is necessary. Where it is not necessary, when the Indriyas are doing their actions, when where it is not absolutely conducive for my growth, I do not allow the sense organs or the mind to get into or involved into such activities. So Sanyamagnishu, Sanyama means in Shama, in the mind which is Shama Yuktaha. So I offer all the activities of the Indriyas into the fire of discipline or fire of mastery. So here we have to imagine this. This is a vision that is given. So, into the mastery, into the discipline of the mind and sense organs, I offer all the indriyas. What does it mean? The indriyas are not activated in spite of strong kama. What is it that activates the indriyas? It is the binding desires, kamas. Kamas are necessary. Desire is necessary. Ichha is something which is a privilege given by Ishvara to the jivas. But when a binding desire or kama drives the indriyas in such a way that the actions of the indriyas become dharma viruddha, or when the indriyas do actions of omission in the form of not following dharma, or when they involve themselves in the actions of commission, where the indriyas involve into adharma, which gives rise to my spiritual fall, such kamas, such desires, I do not allow such desires to promote, or such desires to prompt my sense organs. So the indriyas are not activated by kama. The indriyas know when to get activated and in what activity they have to be involved. So into the mastery and the discipline of sense organs, I offer all the activities of the sense organ. Then shabdadin vishayan anye others, what do they do? Shabdadin Vishayan. The Indriyas will act only with respect to the Vishayas outside, with respect to the objects. The objects have really nothing to do. But the thing is, there is something here in me, there is a hook inside me which makes the sense objects get caught in me because of various reasons. And without my knowledge, automatically a particular sense organ may evoke a strong desire in me to get hooked on to that particular object. But then what do? Niyamena, niyamena, with niyamita, I expose my sense organs to the objects of the senses with niyama. I do not expose my sense organs where they are not necessary to be exposed. I feed the sense objects into the sense organs where and when it is absolutely necessary, and those actions, these particular objects of the senses, are not being misused in the form of either omission or commission or adharma, or where my chitta shuddhi and chitta naishchalyam get disturbed. In such activities, I do not expose my sense organ. How much to eat, how much to talk, how much to see, what to see, how much to think, how much to express, all this is the meaning. So the indriyas are in such a way, the sense objects, I have the decision that I don't allow every sense object to be exposed to the sense organs. I decide how much, when, how, and where. This is the discipline called as Shabdadin Vishayan Anye Indriyagnishu Juhvati. So even the indriyas enjoying the objects of the senses is like a yajna. And what do I offer? I, the ahankara, what do? I offer only that which does not disturb the indriyas. I offer only those objects which do not make the sense organs run like wild horses. As we have seen, that sense organs are compared to the horses, and the disciplined sense organs, disciplined by the mind, shama and dhamma. So the first two lines talk about shama, second two lines talk about dhamma. That is the indriya nigraha and mano nigraha. Again, what is shama? What is dhamma? Care of tattva bodha. Okay. Now, next one he says, Sarvani indriya karmani prana karmani chapare atma sanyama yogagnau juhvati jnana dipite. Now, all the actions of this body, okay, all the actions that are done by the karmendriyas and the body, except the minimal actions that are required, which have to be done. All the unnecessary actions, unnecessary cheshta of the body. We have seen that in ourselves. So unnecessarily moving, all parts of the body, unnecessarily walking, unnecessarily going here, there. All these unnecessary actions, unnecessary cheshtas, which are not required by the body, all these in karmaendriyani, kriyamanani, karmani, and all the pranas, the energies of the pranas are also offered into what? Atma Sanyama Agnav. Atma Sanyama Yoga Agnav. In the Agni or in the fire of self discipline. And what is this self discipline? Contemplation of the self or meditation of the self, which is going to come in the 6th chapter of the same Bhagavad Gita as the Dhyana Yoga. So here there is an offering of all the prana karmas, indriya karmas, which are not necessary, which are simply happening, which are taking away my energy when it is not necessary. Such activities are very, very voluntarily, very, very awarefully, I offer them into the Sanyama, Atma Sanyama Yoga Agnishu, into the self discipline, discipline of the self. That means at every step I have to be alert. At every step I have to understand, is this necessary for me? Is this experience or is this action necessary for me? Is this object of the sense necessary for me? Is this action of the jnanendriyas necessary for me? Is this karmendriya action really necessary for me? So is the spending of my energy in this particular action, is it necessary? Every time I have to be alert and see that which is not going to be useful for me for chitta shuddhi and chitta naishchalam, and that in which there is no prayer involved, no ishvara involved, all such activities I offer them into the fire of self discipline. Now here another few yagnas which Krishna is going to talk about in the next few verses. He says, Dravya yagnastapo yagnaha yoga yagnastatha pare swadhyaya jnana yagnascha yatayas samshitavrataha. Now, there are other yagnas called Dravya yagnas. What is this Dravya yagna? It is a ritual or it is a discipline which people do where they distribute dravya. Dravya means what? Either money or food or clothes or whatever it is, dravyas are distributed to those who need them in tirtha sthanas, in tirtha kshetras like Kashi, Hardwar, and all those places. Some dravyas are distributed. That's also done with the feeling that this kind of a yajna which I'm doing as a sharing with other people is going to help me in my growth, spiritual growth. It is going to get me punya, which is going to help me in my spiritual growth in the form of my becoming capable or yogya for receiving this knowledge. So it says some people follow dravya yagna in the form of distribution of wealth, distribution of resources in sacred places or on very sacred occasions. Then there are tapoyagnas. Tapoyagna means what? When a particular religious discipline is followed as an atonement for something. For example, when I follow the Ekadashi Upavasa, it is basically as a religious discipline, a spiritual discipline, as an atonement for something. At the same time, to see that I have the Atma Sanyama, therefore remaining without eating something for some time, denying myself voluntarily that I'm not going to eat Upavasa, Shivaratri Jagarana, all these kind of disciplines are there. Maunam, all these are the called as the tapas, where there is some amount of discomfort involved for this particular body mind, but still I do that particular activity for the sake of chitta shuddhi and chitta naishchalyam. This is also another type of disciplinary yajna that is done for chitta shuddhi. Then yoga yajna tatha pare. Many of the people follow what? Ashtanga Yoga. Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga is followed as a discipline. Here also, what is it? It is the indisciplined or undisciplined body mind which is offered into the fire of discipline in the form of Ashtanga Yoga. But then next, Krishna says, Swadhyaya Jnana Yagnascha. What is Swadhyaya Jnana Yagna? Enquiry into the teaching of the Vedas, enquiry into the teaching of our scriptures, Vedanta. And also, Swadhyaya means what? Moksha Shastranam Adhyayanam is called as Swadhyaya. Exposing myself through the words of the Guru to the Vedanta Shastra and Jnana Yagna. This is a Swadhyaya Jnana Yagna. Even, chanting or reciting one's, branch of Vedas is also called as Swadhyaya. When I want to see that the particular branch of Veda continues to exist, and I chant every day, I chant the Veda Saswara, the way it has to be chanted. That is also called as Swadhyaya, where I'm involved in either keeping the Vedic tradition of chanting alive, or I am learning to expose my intellect to the Shastras for ultimately the final Shuddhi called as removal of the Ajnanam. So Yatayaha, Yataha means those people who are Samshita Vratas, for whom their vows, their ultimate goal is very clear. A Yati, Yatate iti Yatihi, the one who's clear about what effort he's doing and for what purpose. Samshita Vrataha, for whom the goal or the vows that are being followed as a discipline are extremely clear as to why I am doing this, for what purpose I am doing it, and what is it that I am going to get out of it. These people are Samshita Vratas. Now, in the next verse, Krishna takes up one part of Ashtanga Yoga called as Pranayama. So, what does he say here? Apane juhvati pranam प्राणे पानं तथा परे प्राणापानगतिरुद्ध्वा प्राणायामपरायणाः. So here the whole process of pranayama is explained here. I'll not go into the details. I'll only say that disciplining the prana very, very awarefully and with a certain way, in a certain form, like how much I'm going to breathe in, how many counts I'm going to breathe out, how much I'm going to retain inside, what will be my puraka, kumbhaka, what is that, how much time I am going to let the breath out and keep it like that. All these disciplines regarding even a natural process like breathing, where I add on discipline and do it as a yajna, by following a certain set of principles which are set aside for actually giving chitta shuddhi. Prana by niyama, pranayama means what? By mastery over the prana, one gets the mastery over the mind also. That is what is said by the yogis. And this entire process of pranayama is followed as a discipline. So you all know that before we do any puja, as a puja vidhi, pranayama is done. When we do Gayatri Upasana, Gayatri Mantra, Gayatri Pranayama is done. What is the meaning of this? Here, through the discipline of pranayama, I am trying to bring some kind of a calmness and some kind of a focusing of the mind, so that whatever I'm going to do later is going to help me in chitta shuddhi and chitta naishalyam. So I think this should be okay for pranayama, because I don't want to lose the focus of what Krishna is wanting to say here with regard to all the yajnas. Basically what Krishna is saying is, at whatever level a discipline may be followed, which has two things: prayerful activity and the purpose of chitta shuddhi, chitta nishchalam, for the sake of my spiritual, rising up to the level of, receiving this knowledge, for the purpose of making this mind, this intellect capable, jnana yogya, whatever that kind of a action is done, Such an action, such a discipline is called as yajna. But in the background of all these yajnas, that which excels is the jnana yajna, where I offer my ajnanam and ahankara into the fire of brahmajnanam, and I get the capacity to see everything as Brahman, Sarvatra Brahma Darshanaha, because of which I am able to see Karmani, Akarma, and then I am totally free from all the actions and its phalas. Now let's see the next, you know, uh, discipline which he says, apare niyataharaha pranan praneshu juhvati sarvepyete yajna vidaha yajna kshapita kalmashaha. Other people, even food, eating, niyata ahara, offering what is needed, however much is needed, not simply uncontrolled eating something just because my fancies are going after it. Niyata haraha, doing fasting at a particular time, not eating certain things at a particular time, which they follow as, then pranan praneshu juhvati. That means the pranan, the indriya lolupan, that is all the desires or the fancies of the indriyas, are offered into the prana agni. Sarvepi ete yajna vidaha. All these are the people who are said to follow yajna as a disciplinary action for chitta shuddhi and chitta neshchalam, and yajna kshapita kalmashaha. And these are the people who have thrown away or discarded all the indiscipline, all the kalmashas, all the impurities into this yajna of discipline. And then ultimately, what he says is, यज्ञशिष्टामृत भुजः यान्ति ब्रह्म सनातनम् नायन् नायं लोकोऽस्त्य यज्ञस्य कुतोऽन्य कुरु सत्तम. So ultimately Krishna says, the one who enjoys the prasada of this yajna in the form of discipline, in the form of chitta shuddhi, chitta naishchalyam, and the blessings of the prayerful attitude with which he has offered this as yajna, yanti brahma sanatanam. It is these people who ultimately become jnana yogyas, and through this brahma jnanam, ultimately yanti, or they reach, or they are able to see what? Brahma sanatanam. They are able to see this Brahman as the adhishtanam, as that which is everything, sarvatra brahma darshanam. Nayam lokosti ayagnyasya. But for a person who has absolutely none of these yajnas, the one who does not follow any of these yajnas, for such a person, nothing is achieved either in this loka, here in this life, nor in any other life. He continues to go on doing karma and getting bound by the karma and karma phala, and absolutely in disciplined sense organs. And this kind of a person has nothing gained either in this jagat or anywhere else. Yevam bahuvidha yajnaha vitata brahmano mukhe karmajan vidhitan sarvan yevam nyatva vimoksyase. Hey Arjuna, understand that yevam bahuvida yajnaha, different types of yajnas have been given, where brahmanaha mukhe vitataha. That means in the Vedas, many of such yajnas are given. And the purpose of all these yajnas that are enumerated in the Vedas, Brahmanaha mukhe vitataha means, Brahmana mukhe means in the Vedas. Vedas are also called as Brahma. Brahmanaha mukhe vitataha. They are explained, they are elaborated. Many yajnas are elaborated by Ishvara, by Bhagavan in the Vedas themselves. And understand, karmajan vidhitan sarvan. You understand that ultimately all these yajnas are nothing but karmas. That means what? All the yajnas are born out of karmas. Karmajan vidditan sarvan. But at the same time, through doing the karma, by doing the karma, you go beyond the karma. All the yajnas are no doubt karmas. As and when I do the karma, I understand that this karma done in the form of a yajna for the purpose of chitta shuddhi, ultimately that itself is a vehicle, an instrument which helps me to go beyond the karma. That means what? To understand that I am not the doer, but to go to that, to understand that I am that Brahman, Atma, who's an Akarta, who's an Abhokta, I have to go through karma itself. Initially as a karma yogi, and then I understand that, really speaking, I am not the doer of any karma. Karma simply is an interaction. Karma means any action is an interaction between the Anatma body mind sense complex and the Anatma Jagat. And hey Arjuna, may you understand that all these disciplines that you're doing in the form of a yajna are nothing but karma jan. They are nothing but those that are done by karma, either kayika karma or vachika karma or manasa karma, but none of them are actually done by me, the Atma. And through this action only, I have to learn to go to the understanding that I am the Atma beyond all actions. Therefore, in the background of all these yajnas, ultimately, what does he say now? We'll just just introduce the next verse. Shreyan dravyamayad yajnan jnana yajnah parantapa sarvam karmakhilam partha jnane parisamapyate. So here Krishna says, Shreyan dravyamaya yajna jnana yajna parantapa. Hey Parantapa, Arjuna, out of all these Bahuvidha yajna that I talked about, Jnana yajna is the most superior. That is the one which is the most sacred. Shreyan. Bhai, sarva karma akhilam partha jnane parisamapyate. Ultimately, this knowledge or this jnana yajna is that in which by the karma, I go beyond the karma. Through the vehicle of karma, I go beyond the karma. What is the meaning of beyond the karma? Understanding that I, the Atma, am not the doer in any way. Therefore, it is this knowledge, Jnana Yajna, which helps me to cross over the entanglement with the karma. Through karma, using karma as a vehicle, I cross over all the bondage of karma and karma phala and abide myself in that akarta, abhokta, atma swarupa aham. And he says, therefore, Shreyan, all the dravyamaya yajnas, all that is done, whatever has been, whatever 12, 13 yajnas or disciplines have been told here Shreyan, that is the most, that is the sacred most, and that is the one which is the most superior, because all the other karmas maximum may give you chitta shuddhi and chitta naishalyam. There it ends, all the other disciplines. And if I do any of the karma without any discipline, of course I am bound by the karma and the karma phala. But it is only this jnana yajna which literally lifts me from the bondage of the karma and karma phalam. And therefore, Arjuna, dravyamaya yajnat Brahma Yajnaha or Jnana Yajnaha is Shreyaha. So all the other yajnas or disciplines are given as a background cloth on which this Jnana Yajna gem shines as the sacred most and the most superior and the most exalted yajna that can be done by any mumukshu. That is the ultimate. There is no other yajna beyond that. There is no other discipline beyond that. Knowing me as Brahman, Sarvatra Brahma Darshanam, is the par excellence yajna. There is nothing else beyond that. There is no other karma, no other yajna beyond this understanding. And that is what is going to be told in the last concluding 8 or 9 verses of this chapter. So we'll stop with this. नन्दन्तु साधका सर्वे विनश्यन्तु विदूषकाः अवस्थाशाम्भवी मेस्तु प्रसन्नोऽस्तु गुरुः सदा सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखमाप्नुयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय.